Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to NDISCO'S Village Meeting podcast. Um, this is episode 16, series 2, and you're listening to your host or hostess, as some may call me, Dr. Maslina Ndidi Aparoji. I believe my job is actually to lead the discussions, and like I always share, some of these discussions have already been had before outside of this scenario. um, so my job is actually to relate to what the summary is and what we ended up you know arriving at. This is a discussion that centers around um, what others have seen in us as Africans, as Nigerians, in diaspora, and anywhere else, actually, you can talk about why we do so well. And I also have shared with a few others that it's not out here alone. Nigerians within Nigeria, or what I call the homestead, also excel despite all the hardship and the unfortunate circumstances they find themselves, and which the government also puts them in. Now, that's a topic for another time. But once one person asked me, it's like, why are you dwelling on this? Um, Many people do a good job out in diaspora, many other cultures, many other continents. Why am I building this up? My response is that, when somebody, gives you an accolade, you smile and build on it. And some people may not know that this is going on. So the awareness is being created, first of all, so that we can really stand on what we already know and build more on it. Those successful or aspects that have been attributed to us, those success factors that we may not even know that we are embarking on or we have embarked on, that are giving us such accolades or such results in front of the whole world. So um, we are continuing on that. The second reason I gave was that for our young ones, remember, we're talking about immigrants who came over. We are not African Americans because we did not come as descendants of slaves. But that's not anything derogatory, but is the fact that some of us came up here to the diaspora village, from the fact that we needed better lives, we needed better education, and some of the reasons was to get it and go back home to help build a nation, but it didn't turn out that way. So they are the groups that are making the best of what they encountered. So we talked about the generations that came, the first immigrants, second immigrant, third immigrants. We delved into the character building being one of the aspects that helps a whole lot in making us who we are and our children. And we also touched the fact that the ones that are now the parents to the newer generation here that are also beginning to really have their own children come up, are the ones who came over with the culture, the ideas that they were brought up on. They never, maybe some of them opened their hearts or minds to the culture that they now call home, but gradually, took in some and then left the others. But their children now are the ones I'm calling the ones that are in conflicts, because they are growing up in so many cultures. Some of them have never been to where their parents came from to, you know, um, um, see for themselves the culture which their parents talk about. But the parents are doing a good job now of taking them home. and bring them back. So a few of them are beginning to understand where their parents came from and what and why they did what they did. But the question now is there sustainability in that? Are they going to stand on what their parents did to help them extol in the world and then hand that down to the children? That is the point where we are. And unless somebody reminds them of what it is that their parents have done, knowingly or unknowingly, you know, um, for them to either take the good ones from the bad ones and propagate that, that's where we are. So when we talked about character building, we talked about that was end of March, that ended the month of March discussions. We talked about, what it meant to um, 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 live in integrity, the truth, justice, fairness, and all that, listening and obeying and all that. So today we are delving into the second part. So if you missed the last episodes, please go to, we started with 14, 13, 14, and 15. And today we are going into the 16th one, which is one of the reasons why we are doing well is that we remind our young ones that trouble is not infectious, it is contracted. And again, this is a discussion based or adapted from a book that I wrote a few years ago titled Raising an African Child in America from my perspective um, as an immigrant Nigerian mom. Again, some of these are built on culture. I am from the Igbo culture of Nigeria. And this is, again, I base charity begins from home. So I base some of this from there. Again, we are stepping from the last talk of it takes a village to raise a child. And we talked about the different villages we have and the term village, what it means. Now we're going into step two of talking about um, why Africans do so well in diaspora. And one of the things is that the parents look out. And what does it mean to tell your child trouble is not infectious, it is contracted? So we go to the next and see what it means. We know that whether it's Gen Zs, except for baby boomers who are now the ones that really are insisting on what their parents taught them. Any step after that, the next generations, we call them the Y generation, even to the generation Alpha, Gen Zs, or the next one, the Gen Beta. What we are saying is they no longer just take what is said to them, they ask why. That's why, whatever stage they are, we're calling them the Y generation, a period to always consider and bear in mind. So, what does that mean? We're also looking at the various um, um, uh, proverbs, African proverbs that piggyback on this practice or this thought. The ocean never drowns the person it does not come in contact with. Just think about that. Picture that you are you are close to the ocean. You know, unless you put your feet close to the water, there is no way. Unless there is a tsunami, or tsunami, like people call it, there's no way the water will come from there to sweep you off your feet where you are sitting way away. So think about that. That's a proverb, but it means a whole lot. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. This one was by Charles Darwin. And we're also going to look at that to see why did he say that? A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. So let me start this discussion today by giving you a scenario. I like to tell stories a little bit, and that might maybe give it more perspective than. So I was visiting a Nigerian American family one late Saturday afternoon when I encountered this conversation going on between the dad and his 13-year-old middle school son. The son had just asked this dad if he could join his, classmates, just as children will do at the neighborhood shopping mall. Sometimes they want to we just want to just chill out or go somewhere. So this time he's asking his dad if he could go to the mall. But that the children we have today, this young Y generation, they already, before they ask you that question, they've already made arrangements between, this person and their friends or the schoolmates, where they are going to meet and what they're going to do without you, the parent, knowing upfront. So dad listened to all this and asked to know exactly what the main objective was for this visit to the mall with his son and his friends. So this poor child did not have any concrete response when this question was put to him, why he was going to the mall. So the dad asked again, is there any reason why you are going to the mall? Do you need any school materials or any personal items, hygiene items? So ordinarily, the boy, because he doesn't have any really reason to go to the mall than to hang out, like they say, he couldn't provide any of those answers. Okay. Because if he needed something like school items or that, the dad would have said, okay, go with an elder or your sibling that is older, or wait for dad or myself, the mom or dad, or, to go with you to get whatever that is needed. So after all this, there was nothing really concrete from coming from this young man of 13 years old, than to share that he and his friends were going to, like I say, hang out at the popular shopping mall. So at this point, the dad denied his request. So again, I say it's a white generation. He asked, the young 13-year-old asked his father, why? Why can't I go to the mall with my friends, dad? And dad looked at him in a minute, and I was watching all this, and he says, because I said so. Ah, that phrase, because I said so. The poor child was looking appealingly to his mom. The mom and I were sitting there watching this and watching me, the auntie, um, during all this exchanges to intervene. He was practically praying for us to intervene. But unfortunately for him, we agreed with dad, but his mom and myself, because we don't believe a child should be hanging in the mall. So children do just not hang. Um, you know, call us old fashioned, but that was it. Hanging out in the mall with no objectives to buy, sell, or exchange anything at that young age, and especially with no older person with this person and his young friends, spells some kind of um, doom, disaster, okay, and should not be encouraged as a parent. So, as parents, we know that children, when left alone, unsupervised, and with no purposeful activity planned, such situations can become a recipe for trouble. We all know that. So, naturally, children are bound to play, and some of the time they play rough and they play in unusual places. And in the malls, they start playing pranks with each other that could get them in deep trouble. So, daring each other to, do something is always the case. Playing games, which could have been innocent games, then become, something serious. Um, uh, Trying to tell a friend, okay, who can put something in the pocket without being caught, then becomes shoplifting, which is, punishable crime. All these, including, premature sexual innuendos, um, fights can ensue from a little argument when there is no adult. And all these could lead to an unforeseen police record or jail time. So the boy's dad may have said no to the outing, but could have really saved this boy from anything untoward that could happen to him. Okay. Many of our children pick up bad habits from their others, not maybe all the time in this classroom, but maybe outside of it when they are hanging, like they say, hanging out with each other without no pre-planned activities or any aims. Potential mistakes we know then carry great risks, and part of being a parent is trying to minimize such risks. So, um, one look that I really observed on this boy's face when the parents said, or the dad said, because I said so, when he asked why, was that of bewilderment. Um, you, you know, uh, in the US, for example, there is this arrays of instructions at home, and which is a little bit different from the one in the school, and a whole lot going on. They expect explanations. So in the classroom, everything that they're told not to do, they explain. The teacher explains or the authorities explain. But in the house, especially in an African house, they don't owe you that explanation because their own parents did not give them any explanation for anything. So this child, with that bewildered look, is asking, okay, why are you telling me not to go with my people or with my friends? So they expect you to explain what it is that you are afraid of, you, the parent. Okay. So again, you are trying to get them away from trouble as a parent, because if they end up going to jail or end up getting police records, you are now thinking, or you have gone against what Charles Darwin was saying. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. Because as especially Africans, black, dark skinned, sometimes the books are thrown at you in diaspora without even, you know, um, reasoning behind it. And you don't want to get into that, situation where, you have also a record that is either erased or kept. Yeah. For this young middle schooler, the look on his face was astonishing. And I was cringing looking at him like, okay, the why. Okay. The child needed and waited for an explanation, which never came. So, following his dad's upbringing, that we have to note, and the dictum that was handed down to the dad, nobody explained to him. And that was how he was brought up. Children are to obey elders who know what is best for them. It is a mark of disrespect to ask why then in their upbringing. But we ought to know that that idea of parents know best, yeah, it may work for other cultures, but it doesn't work for every culture, especially for our children who are now growing up in what I called a mixed salad bowl of cultures. Okay. I was there imagining what could have happened if dad would have said, because you could get into trouble because of this, because of that. But maybe that's what the culture is drumming in us. So for people who wonder, why don't your children hang out in the malls most of the time, except with adults and all that? That's the reason why we believe in our culture, in the African culture, in the Igbo culture, in the Nigerian culture, if there is one, or across all cultures in Africa, that the ocean never drowns a person it does not come in contact with. So if this child did not go close to any mall or any of those public arenas without an adult for supervision or anything else, they are not going to contact any records or any bad things happening to them. Okay. So these are the thinking. From my own upbringing, I understand children should be kept safe and guided to grow up to become good citizens of the village. Remember, we talked about the village, but be denied certain demands that could hurt them. That is the African upbringing. So the Nigerian immigrant parents, from their own upbringing, did not ask why some of their requests were never granted, as they learned to just accept what their parents said and take it as it's good for them, you know, without questioning any reasoning behind it. So as they have their own offsprings now, they now exert part of that values learned from their own parents to not question elders. Okay? It is then out of the ordinary for one to hear a Nigerian immigrant parent tell a child they will get answers to their requests in a day or two or longer, in some cases, without providing immediate response or reasons. But on the other side of the coin, the young one that is born or bred here is battling that notion that they don't think it's really a fit for them. This is because the pros and cons of the requests are and possible outcomes need to be thoughtfully considered for the sake of this child and the family name and reputation. That's what the African immigrant thrives on. All parents want their children to tell the truth. So let's look at it the other way. Will these children choose to tell an untruth? So what if this child had lied to the parents that they are not like going to somewhere like the classroom or soccer match or a football practice, or they have a basketball practice? Okay. If they know that their requests will not be denied if they use the other way around, the roundabout it without an explanation, would that have worked for them to be able to go where they wanted to go? But that's a lie. So it all depends again on the upbringing and environment the child finds, him or herself beyond their homes and community. So this awakens another flow of thoughts. What if the children who are now also exposed to other cultures decide not to keep telling us the truth and instead telling us the opposite of truth? Okay? So shouldn't we now start thinking, no, I said so because, and give our explanations and reasoning so that this child will not think we're just blatantly saying no, exerting our powers over them. Of course, it will be tough stepping out of the norm of their own upbringing, but could these immigrant parents, could they at one point strike a balance between the old dictums that they were brought up with and volunteer some explanation to the child for denying their request? I don't know. Okay? So this is what we are battling with, but in the past it had worked. But my question now with our newer generation now having their own kids or their own children, not having that old dictum, what will happen? Okay. Nigerian immigrant parents, for example, in raising their children in America, must realize that in those days of global inquisition and learning, just saying no because you said so does not help the child grow or help clarify a child's curiosity. So, without doubt, I know that one of the crucial influences in any child's life is parenting. So, parenting oversight in the past had included all the mundane aspects of a child's emotional, physical, moral, behavioral, spiritual, social, educational, and all that, and more upbringing. So, today, more exclusive issues are emerging. The internet is now a predator, predator, a danger hanging out there. Higher cases of child abuse, sexual, molestations, increased bullying, and all that. Early teenage fatherhood or motherhood, pregnancies, and all that. Sexually transmitted diseases that are deadly, alcoholism, drunk driving, drugs, and all that. Okay, too many to include. What are our stake in it? When we just say no, does that help? Is it time to start really breaking it down for them to explain this is why I said no, so that they understand better? But despite the fact that there are parenting programs springing up all over the place to help parents combat some of these society and child interpersonal and interpersonal skills, there still seems to be a gap between what should be, what is, and what is going to be in the society today. So we must have to bear that in mind. That what worked in the past, the reason why we are acclaimed today to be really, really productive in diaspora or being successful may not continue with the younger ones now that are now having our children that are having our grandchildren. Again, some of them now get into negotiation. I would share with you that I watched our son and dad get into that. The children now have learned negotiation. And then on the other hand, it's a question of listening. Because when you go to that end of saying, I don't think so, because I say so, I think you put them off. I witnessed this, and some as a mother, sometimes I think the best thing is to stay out. I didn't that may be our son, but that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the dad. So they got into. I think that was about, if I may remember very well. And I don't think they even remember this discussion. It was maybe between end of high school or first year of college. And our son wanted to go with the friends to a party. At that point, he was able, he has values, he knows what to do. And we have given him a little bit of, space to remember what he has been taught. So one of the good things was at least he was a designated driver because he couldn't drink that much, so he would drive others. But this evening, Dad said, "Well, we expect you to be back by 11 o'clock," and he goes, "No, the party is starting at 8, so why would I leave at 11?" And the dad says, "Well, I expect you back by 11." And he says, and the negotiation started. And the first question was, why? My friends are still there. Why would I come out? And I had the fear that the dad will go say, because I said so. But he didn't. Thank God. But that's not him. That's not his style. So he asked, why do you need much time or much more time? And this conversation went back and forth. Our son will give the explanation as to why he wanted more time. And dad will give an explanation as to why, he should be back, early. So they ended up um, each coming halfway between 11 and 11:30 or midnight. I don't know which one. But this is a party that could have continued till 2 a.m. or something. But the reason why I remember this was it struck me watching them do that, ping pong of conversation, that dad needed that to understand our son's thought. of why or what they do, why they do what they ask, why they ask, why what they want to stay in Paris so long. And our son, that wasn't a good exercise for him that will help him later in life to negotiate, to find his own footing and stand his own to answer questions. So that was helpful to see all that. But when um, we have this type of children now growing up to have their own, we need to be conversant of what they are what they are facing, what they are going through, because a lot of them have peer pressure going on, which we as their parents maybe never really experienced. So we did well with enforcing our own without them asking questions. But it boils down to why some of them today and could revolt from what we pressurized them to do that wasn't really what they wanted to do. But out of respect, they listened. And we're going to talk about that in the next episode. Okay. We can work out some things with them. Okay. Do as I say does not work because I said so in some cases does not work. It harbors a little bit of resentment, but we did that. Okay. Um, there's a whole lot of such explanations going on, you know. The action there is that we have to be careful when we ask the children to do stuff without giving them an explanation. Um, I remember um, that there was a child who was asked to go, for example, play a piano, learn to play piano. They kept remembering or reminding this child um, that he is going to make a career out of this piano. They kept really asking him to go, that it's because the dad had played piano, the mom had played piano, and they kept pushing him to do so. And he kept telling them, by his countenance, that that wasn't what he wanted to do, but they had, kept a deaf ear to that. And when the revolution came, he he ran away from the piano completely. He had wanted actually to play it for just ceremoniously, just to know how to play a few, but the parents were pressurizing this child into playing it as something that would become a career. Nobody asked if he was even at any aspect music conscious to that effect, but they were trying to push. And this is where we are saying to them, you must do this, you must do that. That had worked. In some cases, that does not work in all cases. Okay. So we conclude this with a summary. Again, the photo, I keep referring to this picture that I designed. And when I tell people I designed it, they keep asking me, well, how did I think about it? It is a combination of things there. The child wants to be free. Our children want to be free and do the things that they will do. Yes, our job as parents will be to make sure they don't get hurt. And if we have to tell them no, we should, we must. Okay. But we have to say that in a way that they understand why we're saying no to them, not just because I said so. That may have worked in the generation past, but the newer ones, it may not happen. Okay. There's typical saying, and this is according to Oluyinka Olutoye. The typical saying in a Nigerian household is that the best inheritance that a parent can give you is not jewelry or cash or material things. It is a good education. It is expected. So Nigerian parents in that proverb. Well, that's not a proverb actually that I just mentioned, but it's a saying. And we all know that it is. But they believe in the proverb, when you capture a snake's head, the rest of the body becomes a rope. So we are going to end this on this aspect. We are reminding us that we have done well in the past by engaging our children, giving them values, that under stricter rules or processes that we learn from our parents, because I said so. But we need to reconsider this, because the next generation that our own children are bearing may not have that um, patience to listen to that, because our children may not agree with our own premise when we use that on them. So we need to embrace what is coming. And I hope that with that, what we have as reputation out there of doing well in diaspora will continue. And at this point, I will say thank you. I appreciate your listening. The next episode we're going into is another great area where people see us doing well. And I appreciate your attention. Please subscribe. The subscription and people really going to read these episodes or these podcasts, going into that is increasing daily. And I appreciate you all for doing that. Get your friends to look into. There are so many episodes. I have more than 50 now, and different episodes. And it's not meant for just adults, it's meant for young adults and youths, because there's a lot there for everything, and even young little ones that you can, read it out to. It's great because you can start and stop, start and stop. It's not something you finish at a go. You can listen to that in audio fashion, or by also looking at the points that I put in print so that you can also follow that. Again, I thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye. This is Dr. Maslena Oparaji.